Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you. Today, the topic is building great habits. It's something I've been working on quite a bit because without it, you don't accomplish anything. But I just returned home from an 18-mile mountain training run on the lush red rocks on the trails that zigzagged their way up Pikes Peak. And I looked at my new runner's smartwatch after I got home, and it told me that it had already taken 43,500 steps for that day. And it was still morning. So I thought, yes, take that. And I showered and I changed my clothes and sat back down to talk to my wife for a few minutes before I headed off to work, and my watch buzzed. So I turned my wrist and the watch display lit up, and it said in all caps, "Move!" with a cocky little exclamation point at the end. And I thought, what the? And I looked at the little wrist-hugging mocker and actually said to my watch, "Don't you know what I just did?" And I finished the sentence with some appropriate expletive. But the watch didn't care. I had been inactive too long for her liking. So all my wrist-hugging coach was doing was trying to help me build a habit of movement throughout the day. No judgment, just a little less couch and a lot more action is all she wants me to do. So a habit is something that we do through repetition that eventually becomes second nature, seemingly unconscious, taking very little effort. These can be good and these can be bad. If you're 16 years old and you're driving on the interstate for the first time during rush hour at highway speed with rain pelting the windshield, it takes every bit of brain power. But after you've driven that route for a few years, in every type of weather, it's just routine. It's a habit. No big deal. Here's a quote by Aristotle about habits. Quote, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." Aristotle thought excellence was a habit. It's a habit. You know, anybody who's, like I heard yesterday, quoted something that I've heard many times is Wayne Gretzky quote, that you miss all the shots that you didn't take. You see, and so if you want to hit, you got to do something, and the more you habitually do something, the more it becomes ingrained into your life. Life is all about habits. Some habits are good, others are bad. We all understand that. Almost everything we do in life is affected by our habits. Good ones move us toward the promised abundance that anxiously awaits us, while bad habits rob us of who we are and redirect our energy to the scraps left behind by others. If you're not building your own, I guarantee somebody else is manipulating you. 1 Corinthians 6:12 from the Amplified says, "Everything is permissible for me, but not all things are beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be enslaved by anything and brought under its power, allowing it to control me." We want to be in control of our life, not our life in control of us. And there's a difference. It's like the big argument now about the brain and the mind. If I said, picture a mind in your mind, well, you're probably going to picture the shape of a brain that you saw on some picture. But the mind isn't the brain. The mind is who you are. The mind might be in that brain. The mind might be throughout your whole body, but your brain is just an organ. Now, habits, they're all in this deep-rooted part of our brain, and the habits master our lives, good or bad. And they're so deeply ingrained that we don't even realize that they're there any longer. But it's good to know that any bad habit can be changed if we can detect the trigger, replace the routine, and enjoy the reward. And we do it all over again and again and again. Habits are all part of God's design. I remember when I first wanted to learn to bow hunt. And I was a good hunter, but I wasn't a good finder. I wasn't a good getter. But I like to shoot. And I like to build the arrows and try to make bows and all this. And I shot this English longbow. And it has no sights on it. And so you have to learn to shoot what they call instinctively. It's just by feel. And then pretty soon you get fairly good at it. It'd be like a baseball pitcher. You know, he doesn't, you know, he can paint this corner, he can paint that corner. You know, he can throw a curve, a slider, drop. He can do all kinds of stuff just by moving his hand and his body. He's done it so many times that he's crazy good at it. You see, it's instinctive. You know, it's like a good basketball player. You see them and it's like, how do they do that? You know, how do they jump that? How do they trade hands and turn around in the air and jam it in there? You see, how? Well, it's just habit now. It's no big deal for them to do that. I mean, just pick a sport. Doesn't matter what it is. You know, you can excel at it, but it takes a lot of time. It's like that old 10,000 hour rule. When you've done something 10,000 hours worth of time, usually you've mastered it. That's a lot of time. That's a 4-year college degree, plus a little bit. That's a kid playing in the playgrounds every day, you know, shooting baskets his whole life until high school. You know, get pretty good. There's a lot of muscle memory there. There's a lot of habitual things. You ever seen a street artist and, you know, the dude does the characters and they go, and in 2 or 3 minutes, they got you pegged. It's like, how do they do that? I couldn't do a stick figure that fast. You see, and but it's repetition. Now there's an anatomy of every habit, and I'll break it down. And a guy named Charles Duhigg told us in the book The Power of Habit. It's one that I'm reading right now. He talks about something called a habit loop, and it has 3 parts. It has the trigger or the cue. That's number 1. Number 2 is the routine or behavior. And number 3 is the reward. And it's always there. I mean, just think of even brushing your teeth. Okay, you know you're supposed to brush your teeth. You know, you ate your breakfast or you get up in the morning, whatever time you do it, and you feel your teeth, feel sort of fuzzy. And you brush it, and what's your reward after that? Well, they feel clean. My mouth feels fresh. That's your reward. Your cue is you get up in the morning or after breakfast, whatever your cue is, the routine is brushing your teeth, and the reward is clean teeth and a fresh breath. An engaging smile, you know, whatever it is. See, it's true for good and bad habits. It's the cue or the trigger. There's always a trigger. And if we can learn to find the triggers in our life, we can begin to change habits that we want to change. There's always a cue or something that triggers an act. Then we go into our routine, and then somehow we are rewarded, or we wouldn't keep doing it. Without a reward, you wouldn't keep doing it. It's like a lot of business people will say, I'm going to make 5 business calls. I'm going to stop in 5 businesses, and after that, I get lunch. Or I'm going to do, you know, after I do 20 push-ups, you know, then I get to check my email, but not until then. You know, so it's just that reward thing. It's a trigger, and then the behavior, and then the reward. We've all known people addicted on drugs, whether they're illegal or prescription or what have you. We've all met people and been around that. Or tobacco or alcohol or energy drinks. Sugar can be addictive. Fast foods. Shopping, you know, gambling, you know, biting fingernails, or the internet. You know, they all can be habits, right? They all can be. I know a guy in my family who loved these Monster drinks, and he started putting more and more weight on. Probably put on over 100 pounds, and his teeth rotted out of his head. And so they got new teeth. He stopped doing these drinks, and he switched to something else that to me isn't any better. You know, now he's drinking beer. You know, Not there's anything wrong with beer. I'm just saying, trade it for water, something that's not going to make you fat, you see. But at least he did something, you see. But an addiction is a deeply rooted habit. That's all it is. I've known junkies. You ever known somebody who gets off of heroin? And then what do? They get on to methadone. And then they get off of methadone, they start drinking. And they just keep trading one habit for another because it's easy to trade habits. Oh, I'm going to teach you how to upgrade your habit. You don't have to trade to something equally devastating. Trade to something better. Biting fingernails. I mean, that can ruin somebody's social life. It can make somebody sick, you see, and they look silly when they're doing that all the time. But it's a habit. People pull the hair out of their head sometimes. I mean, it's just a habit. They just start pulling it and touching it, and pretty soon they got a bald spot. It's weird behavior, but it happens. It's habits. A good habit could be brushing your teeth after breakfast. That's a good one. My mom used to check our toothbrush. There's 6 of us. We all had our toothbrush. We all had a set of dots that represented us. I guess she couldn't remember our names, but if she did number 3 dot and it was dry, she knew I didn't brush my teeth. And sometimes I just put it under the water and set it back in there because I was too busy wanting to play. But you brush your teeth. Or what about drinking 8 glasses of water a day? That's a pretty good habit, isn't it? Or what is it? 2 ounces for every pound of your body weight or something like that. I don't know, something like half of that. Cut that in half. What is it?
Half your body weight in ounces.
Half your body weight in ounces. Yeah, it's a lot of ounces. Yeah, and so for some of us, but for all you skinny people, it's not. A couple of sips of water. Got to watch out talking about weight, because we're all working on that stuff. It's such a great country that we live in. The other day, Joseph and I cheated about something, and cheated. We cheated eating something we shouldn't have, and I said, "Thank God we live in a country with such abundance." Instead of condemning myself, what's the point after you did it? You see, but you drink water, going to yoga 3 times a week, signing up for some kind of sport. Going for an extra bike ride, jogging a little more, going to the gym, going for a walk. Whatever it is. They all have a cue, though. It'll always be tied to some routine. And then there's going to be a reward that wants to make us do it again. Without a reward, you're not going to want to keep doing it. The reward may be just you feel better, or you feel like you worked out. Sometimes you may not feel better, but that pain makes you feel good. So a not so good habit. I sit down on the recliner. I lean it back. And I turn on the TV with the remote because it's way too far to walk. And, and that's a trigger. And then I get up and find out where my wife hid that bag of chips. That's my routine. Happens every day. And then I taste the salty decadence, which is my what? My reward. And then I go for a few more. And it just doesn't seem to feel normal sitting there watching TV without a beverage and some chips. It seems sort of empty. And it took me a while to break that habit, honestly. When we first got married, we liked ice cream. And then we started putting on weight, so we stopped ice cream. And I don't miss it anymore, but it was hard at first because every night I'd eat that ice cream. There's people who put on 100 pounds watching TV at night. They eat frosting or something. You see, you get that not so good habit. But it took me a while to break that habit of the chips. Now, sadly, once I sit down with chips again, because she'll bring them into the house, then I start wanting them every night again. So my mind is going right back. So I've learned that you don't really ever get rid of a habit. You have to replace it, and you use the same trigger, and that's the key. Use the same trigger. Now here's a better habit. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m. Trigger. I get out of my bed as fast as I can and I put on my running clothes and get my lazy body outside before it has time to figure out what just happened. That's my routine. And then I run home and shower feeling just a little bit stronger, which is my what? My reward. And morning just doesn't feel right anymore unless I run, because now it's a habit. I don't ever hit snooze. I don't ever lay there and wish I had an extra hour. I just get up and I get moving before I have time to think. Some people splash cold water in their face or put their hand under, whatever it takes to get you up. You see, I don't need that, but habits are powerful behaviors that eventually become hardwired into our brains, so much so that we perform them automatically. And I'll get to a couple of examples in a minute that will make a lot of sense to you. And this automatic behavior allows us to perform repetitive tasks such as driving to work each and every day without giving it much thought. Habits free up brain power so we can think about other things while we're doing some menial task. Productive habits are God's little helpers. Bad habits serve a lesser God. Galatians 5:16 from the Amplified tells us that as we train ourselves to walk habitually by the Spirit of God, to act on those higher thoughts, that we won't mindlessly respond to worldly manipulation. Habits push or pull us from all sides of our life. The Bible says to put on the mind of Christ. Well, that doesn't mean the brain of Christ. My God, where are you going to find that anyway? You see? Well, how do you put on the mind? It's simply just putting on the good thoughts that he thought. It's not too hard to find. Put on the mind of Christ. Could we make that a habit? I almost titled this teaching The God Habit, but I didn't have time to really work it to that point. But that's what we really want. We want to become more godly, God-like. We want to become more Christ-like. We want to become ambassadors for Christ. And it takes habitual practice to do that. You ever driven to work, pulled into your usual parking space, slapped the car into park, and could hardly remember anything about the drive? I've done it, and it's been spooky. It's like, how did I get here? And you think, am I possessed? But you're not. What it is it's just a mindless chore that you've done so many times that your body just put it into what do they call that? Like cruise control or whatever, autopilot, and you do it. Now, if something had gotten in the way, your mind would have woken you up, and you would have swerved out of the way and missed the cat, whatever it is. Where we live, it's like drivers drive like idiots, and they're like rolling down the road like armadillos on a windy day. So it's a habit. See, it's like you just appeared at work because of that habit. And the central cognitive part of your brain that makes millions of decisions transferred her duties to the basal ganglia. And that's where all your habits are stored. It's like a little walnut or golf ball size shaped thing right in the very center towards the base of your brain, right next to your reptilian brain. And habits are part of God's design. And habits keep us from going crazy. If you had to think of every movement, if you had to make a decision for every movement that you did in your car, your palms would sweat and you'd be worn out, with pains in your neck and back before you ever got to work. Think about it. Just getting started, we tell ourselves, check the mirror. In fact, I better check all three mirrors. Put my foot on the brake, start the car, take it out of park, click it down one notch to reverse, let up on the brake, allow the car to creep backwards out of the driveway. Not too much gas, not too fast, touch the brake just a little bit again, turn the radio off that I left blasting the last night, set the temperature, apply a little more gas, now just apply a little more brake, slowly, check the mirrors again, put my foot on the brake, stop completely, pull the shifter all the way down to drive, click, click. You see, apply gas, but not too much yet. Turn the wheel 20 degrees. Get going straight down the road. Now I'm heading the direction I want. I check the mirrors again. I turn the radio back on. I change the station. I refuse to look at the text you just sent me. I'm not even going to think about that text. Oh no, now a Facebook notification. Geez, why do they hit me up every time I just start driving? Then there's cars parked on each side of my street. And here comes someone driving, heading straight at me. Now I got to pull this car over within inches of these parked cars to let this fool come by the other way, because he ain't going to stop for me. You see? And then I just keep moving forward too, because I'm not going to stop for him. And so gas, brake, mirror, check, blinker. I turn onto the main road. And that's just leaving my block. What if you had to concentrate and think through all that stuff? We would be lunatics. You remember when you learned how to type? I remember when I first taught myself, I bought this Mavis Beacon typing program. And I started typing, and I couldn't do it for nothing. And then after a few weeks, I was like, it's like my fingers felt like they had a mind of their own. They knew it was a weird feeling. It was like, but I mean, that's just a habit. It's just muscle memory. Or musicians, they can just riff, they can just jam, they can play, and they just know that instrument so well. It's just such a pleasure to be around people that are professionals at anything. I don't care what it is. A good speaker can just get up there and they move a certain way, they look a certain way at the audience, their hands. I mean, it's fun to watch people that are great at doing anything. You see, but you understand that the whole part of this muscle memory. I mean, God designed this. It's nothing more than a habit. It's so you don't go nuts. You don't need to use, you need your brain for other things. That's why humans have evolved to the point they have evolved. Because they're not having to decide everything. Animals have instinct. It's just bred into them, some movements. Cats, I don't care if there's only one cat, you got a kitten that was never around any other cats. It's going to make cat moves, right? It's going to make a certain sound when birds are outside. You ever heard a cat do that? They make this, it's wild. Dogs are dogs. People are trained. We're not instinctive creatures for the most part. Maybe there's something there, but it's not the same. We have reason, and we have this thing, this basal ganglia that harbors our habits. And it's just such a cool thing. You see, but it can be such a bad thing too. Because the bad habits, they not only drive us bonkers, but they drive everybody else crazy who knows us. You've been around people who had problems. And it's like, come on, just stop doing that. And your life will be better. And then I can't stop it. I'm too deep. I'm in too deep. You know what I'm saying? We've all been around people like that. Well, an MIT professor named Anne Graybiel said, quote, "We've always thought, and I still do, that the value of a habit is you don't have to think about it. It frees up your brain to do other things. However, it doesn't free up all of it. There's some piece of your cortex that's still devoted to that control." And I thought, yeah, if it wasn't for that piece of the cortex where we could snap out of that habit, then we could never, ever change. It would be imprinted for life and you could never change. And how horrible of a world would this be? There'd never be anybody rehabilitated from any problem. You see, James 4:7 from King James says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and he'll flee. Okay? Now think of this in terms of habits. God's good, devil's bad. God's good, devil's bad. And the word submit in the Greek, it's a word hupotasso, and it means to be subject to become addicted to. That's a strong word. An addict is a strong word. It's not a good word, but here, this word hupotasso it's a habit to the point of addiction. You see, submit yourself to God. Become addicted to God. Now, if you're addicted to something, what do you think about that thing? You love it, right? You want it. You've got to have it, right? You got to have that thing. As you used to say in the 70s, you're jonesing for that thing, right? You know, I mean, you know, you've got to do it. You see, that's the word submit. And it's to become addicted to, become subject to. Subject means you put yourself under the rule of that thing. And it's to arrange your life in such a way that you habitually go to that source. That's an easy way that I thought about it. It's just a way you arrange your life in a way that you habitually go to that source. That's hupotasso. That's that word submit. Now the word resist there, you submit to God, resist the devil, means to stand against. And it means to take a stand and then it's cool when you look this up in its nuances, it means to substitute something in place of what you want to resist. Now, how smart was God in putting that in here? I mean, all these researchers now are figuring this out, and it was written right there in, was that James 4? You see, it was written right there. To resist means to replace, to substitute something else in place of what you're trying to resist. Now, remember the habit cycle? You know, it starts with that cue, that trigger. What triggers that response? Then that behavior. And then that reward, which brings you right back to the next time that cue happens. So that's that habit loop, the trigger, the routine, and the reward. The trigger, the routine, and the reward. And see, if we're so used to doing things bad, people sometimes think that it's good. I mean, even our language has changed. When now we say something's bad, it means it's good. I mean, it sounds silly, but I mean, we're so used to it now. You know, so how was your night last night? Man, I got hammered. I got smashed. You know, those really aren't good things. If you really got hammered and really got smashed, you know, you're in a bad hurt. You see, but it's a trigger. It's a routine. It's a reward. The trick to replacing a bad habit with a good one is to use the same triggers, but replace a broken behavior with a stronger routine. And a new reward will await you. At night, instead of eating the chips, I may just have me some sparkling water. You see, I might put a little cranberry juice in there. You see, and just so it looks has a color to it. I might even put some stevia in there if I'm feeling like I want something sweet. Then it's like a sweet drink, but it doesn't affect my pancreas, which doesn't produce fat on my body until they find out that stevia hurts you. You know, but but it's really, you just have to replace it. So what are you working on? Is it getting out of bed? So, you know, I mean, if people have trouble getting out of bed, then figure some way to get yourself out of bed. Your cue, the alarm goes up. That's your cue. Now stand up. And what I did when I first got married is I would put the alarm clock across the room. Then I had to get up and had to walk all the way over there to turn it off. Nowadays we use our phones. So put your phone across the room. Oh, well, what if I get a Facebook message at night? Don't answer it. It's not that, why interrupt? Sleep is hard enough to come by. It's crazy what we do. Answer and text. A lot of people, before they get out of bed, they've looked through all their emails. The problem with that is now you're on somebody else's schedule. You just put yourself on somebody else's schedule. The best thing to do is get up and start your own day. If you want to read something, write down the 5 things you want to do that day. The first thing that comes to your mind, you know, write it down. Do something, but start your own day. But just to close out this one part about the whole cycle there, the routine, the cue, the routine, and the reward. Just like my watch says, you just got to move. And so, and it does get me. In fact, at the building I work in, I was seeing all these people all day long just wandering around outside the building. And I thought, and they do it at just about the same times. So the ones that do it at the same time probably have the same watch, and it tells them to move. So they get up and they walk around the building, and then they go back in. They get a few more steps in. But now my watch has made me, when I get the buzz, I just get up and I walk around a little bit because I realize I've probably been sitting there for an hour. And it's, I don't have the physical job anymore. Now here's some common triggers. Now, just knowing the word trigger is one thing. Here's common triggers, and psychologists have narrowed it down to about 5 basic categories. The first one is time. Time is one of the most common triggers. Time regulates our daily schedules. We wake up at a certain time. We eat at the same time. We brush our teeth at the same time. We go to bed about the same time. Time's your friend. A schedule's your friend. Scheduling time is a trigger for success. So time. There may be a certain time of year where people think about a loved one who just passed. And it may be hard for them. You see, there may be a certain, well, you get the point. The second one is location. And this is a biggie. Certain places can cause certain behaviors to kick in. Let's say I'm trying to quit drinking, but then my friend wants to meet me at the bar. Is that a good call? Probably not. It's going to be, just one. Just one's not going to hurt me. Or you're trying to quit smoking, but you like the fellowship that goes along with people hanging outside. Okay, so, but if you go outside, just one puff, just one. But it doesn't work that way. Sometimes location can be a hard one. Can be really hard. Your old neighborhood, you go there and you start acting like you used to act. Sometimes you just feel different when you walk into your old neighborhood or your parents' house. All of a sudden you feel like a child again or something. And then if you feel like that, what happens? You get treated like that. Locations are powerful. How many times do I look in the fridge looking for something that I know is not there any longer? It's a location trigger. I walk in. Problem is I don't ever get rewarded anymore for that one. But I still do it. I walk in there, open the cupboard, nope, no chips. Open the refrigerator, no cheese. No, whatever I liked in there. It ain't there anymore. You see? So my cycle will more and more get to where I don't do it because it's a waste of time. But you get the point. You see, location, it can trigger things. And if you can learn to figure out your triggers, then you can begin to get over your habits, the ones that you don't want. Remember, you replace them with something you do want. Number 3 is a preceding event. You respond to something. Your phone rings at night and you do what? Answer it. If you're in a business meeting, should you answer that phone? If you're talking to somebody, should you answer that phone? No, isn't it? It's sort of rude when people do. When you're talking. See, but it's calling you. You see, it's beckoning you. That's the cue. Your normal response would be to answer it. A text or an email hits our phone and we check it. You see, we sit down to dinner and you might pray. It might be just a routine, right? It's a good routine. You see, preceding events are also great ways to add in a new behavior. Let's say I want to be nicer to my wife. So let's say we sit down to dinner, I pray, and then in my mind, I'm going to say something that I really like about her or I'm thankful for. I don't have to tell her I'm doing that. I just do it. You see, now I'm stacking a behavior onto another good behavior. And it's sort of easy to do. Now, let's say I didn't pray and we never did and I wanted to start, well, maybe prayer would be a good way to start. If you don't believe in prayer, then say something nice. To God. No. Call it whatever you want. You see? Preceding event. how about like for every email I get every day in my inbox, I'm going to do a push-up. Some days you might do 300 push-ups that day, right? But I mean, whatever it is, maybe, because then you could be hitting two goals. You could be getting into better shape, and checking your email, which you're going to do anyway. So, but just events trigger things. Events are triggers. Event could be as simple as your phone. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes, I had built a business one time where I didn't have any more time. I had no more time to take on any more clients, and I didn't want to hire anybody. So when the phone rang then, it literally sent a shiver of fear up my back because I didn't have any way to take care of any more clients, yet I wanted more. But I had no more time, but I didn't want any more. But I wanted them. It was weird. And the only resolution for that is I had to hire somebody. You see, which is scary. So that's preceding event. Events trigger. Number 4 is our emotional state. Emotions can be a trigger. Stress-related behaviors are obvious, like stress eating. You ever know anybody who does that? They get nervous. Something bad happens. A girlfriend, boyfriend breaks up with them. Then they start eating and they put on 20 pounds. I mean, it's sad, but it's emotional. It's a trigger. That emotional event triggered it. So how do you turn that? Well, it's not easy. Maybe instead of eating a chip, do a sit-up. Walk around the block. Do something positive. Just when that trigger hits where you normally would grab a bag of chips or a bottle of Jack, you see, and then do something else. I'm not saying there's wrong with chips or Jack. I'm just saying that if it has become a problem, then do something about it. You see, someone unfriends you on Facebook. I see people flip out over this. They literally flip their lids. Or somebody friends somebody that you don't like, and then you get mad at them because they friended somebody who you're not a friend with. Then they raise all holy hell on Facebook. You see? I mean, stress-related behavior. It's crazy. Or you hear about a relative who's sick and you react, oh no, they're going to die. No, they just have a cold. You know what I'm saying? People, it's just a trigger it's an emotional trigger because, or somebody hits a certain age. Oh my God. So, when I'm really, 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 really stressed, I've learned just do something physical. I'll go for a long run, or I will, that's not why I run all the time, folks. I talk about it all the time. I'm not that stressed out, but sometimes I work on my car. You can clean the garage. You can straighten up your desk. Just do something sometimes. And then you can get through that instead of just sitting there and, tear staining your glasses. You see? Maybe try switching that stressful feeling, where you're going to eat that little stress-relieving Debbie cake, with a walk around the parking lot. You see, it's an emotions trigger. And the last one is, and this is one that most people don't realize, it's called other people. Other people. Being around others can cue up certain behaviors. The whole Madison Avenue advertising thing is built on this. All the name brands, that your kids want going back to school. I got to have these shoes. I got to have this. I got to have that. You see, I know my son, he wanted certain brands. I was going to buy him Kangaroos. Remember those cheap shoes, with the little Velcro thing, He said, Dad, I don't want Kangaroos. I said, well, I got $50 for a pair of shoes, and that's all I'm going to spend. If you want shoes, if you want the Nikes, or if you want the Converse, or whatever is popular that year, then you got to come up with the rest. You know what? He always did, because he wasn't going to wear Kangaroos anymore. So, see, people But why do people want the name brands? Because other people are impressed by name brands. Why do they drive the Lincoln Navigator, or the Porsche, or whatever? I mean, they're great cars. I want them, But the point is what do you really need a car for? To get you from here to there, really. I mean, if you boil it down, it's to get you from here to there and get you back, or to haul something here and there. You might need a truck. You see, and guys are real good at convincing their wives they need more trucks. They've been wanting them since they're little kids, right? But being around others, it cues up certain behaviors. You're around certain people, and then you'll drink more than you normally do, or you're going to eat more if you're not into drinking. They come over to your house and your wife puts out all the snacks, and then you think it's a free-for-all because you know she ain't going to stop you when the friends are over there. That's my trick. So it's been said that we are a combination of the 5 people we hang around the most. And you'll find out if you could track the finances, the 5 people you hang out the most, your income is probably right in the middle of that. And the words you use, your vocabulary will always be right in the middle of that. I managed a steel fabrication shop. I was an iron worker way back in the day. We were pretty newly married, a few years married. And this job, it wasn't my dream job, but it was a job, and it paid pretty well. And I knew how to weld, and I knew how to read blueprints, and I could actually read a tape measure, unlike all the other guys in the shop. They had no idea what decimals were. And so, but I was around these guys about 10 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours a day, and they cussed like crazy. Now, I was a minister at that time, and so I remember one Sunday after a meeting, one of the older gentlemen, a guy as old as my guy named Don, he was as old as my dad would have been. And he just said, "Mark, let's go for a little walk." And he put his arm around my shoulder and we walked outside. And he said, you need to be careful what you say when you teach. I said, "What did I say?" I thought he was going to reprove me about some scripture. And he goes, "You're cussing like a sailor up there." And I said, "What?" I said, "What did I say?" And he said, "Well, you said this and this and this and this and this and this." And he said all these words. And I was like, my face was turning redder than it normally is. And he said, "You don't have to use 4-letter words to accentuate the Bible." I was unaware. There's a Bible verse that says, "Evil communications corrupt good manners." You see, your mom told you, you got to choose your friends wisely. The people you hang out with, they can get you into trouble. I know. I may have white hair now, but I'm red-headed on the inside. Only one redhead I ever knew wore a halo. And it never even got tarnished. Mine, I lost it. I lost my halo. By the time I could walk. So you get at other people, you hang out with the wrong people. At the gym, what happens to you? You get hurt. Come on, let's put an extra 45 on each side. Oh, my back. Or they push you down and you blow your sciatic out or something because you're working out above your level or something. You see? It's just people. People are triggers. The trigger is rife with peer pressure. And I started off talking about that. Every person you voted for is because of who you hang around. Basically, there's very few people that can beat that kind of peer pressure. You go to New York City, you're going to want to be a Democrat. You live in certain cities, you're going to want to be a Republican. Because you're not going to fit. If you don't, or you're going to be in some places where you don't want to say that you're anything. You're an independent. You see? And so the point is, or you grew up a certain neighborhood And if they knew that you actually voted for that guy instead of that guy or girl or whatever, they're gonna tease you. They're gonna put you down. They're gonna call you names until you actually do something right. There's been studies after study after study of kids who were honor students who dumbed themselves down so they didn't stand out and get teased by the other kids on the playground. Therefore, they didn't get the college scholarships they wanted to because they were smart. They would rather, peer pressure ruined their lives. It's hard to beat, folks. Advertising does it all the time. This is why people vote for whom they vote for. That's why we think we're above it when we're easily triggered by others. You see, it's hard to see. So these 5 triggers will help you get started, in the quest to finding out what drives your behavior. Swapping habits using the same triggers can change your life. And there's some verses in the Bible that are sort of cool. I'll just hit a couple of them here to close this thing out. Like 1 Corinthians 16:15 says, I beseech you, brethren, ye know the house of Stephanas, that it is the first fruits of Achaia, and that they have addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints. They've addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints. So what does that mean? It means just you're given everything of who you are to help another. Wouldn't that make for a good relationship? I mean, isn't that why people like dogs? Dogs actually act happy when you come home. You see, unlike some spouses, remember when Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem to hang out with the temple scholars? When his family had come to Jerusalem, then they went 70 miles back towards Galilee, and then they realized Jesus wasn't there, and it took them 3 days to find him, and they found him in the temple. And verse 48, did I tell you? It's Luke 2:48. It says, and when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my father's business? Now it sounds like he's being a little cocky. He's being a little brusque with his family. But I think there's more to this than that. I think probably back in Nazareth, their hometown, I'll bet he spent day after day after day in the synagogue with the top scholars in that hometown. It was his norm. It was his habit. He just could not fathom why his parents wouldn't have found him in the temple. Doesn't that make you think that maybe he was just, that was his habit? He just couldn't get enough of it. You ever known somebody who just couldn't stop reading? They're reading a book all the time. Every time you see them, they're reading. That's how Jesus was with the Word. He just dug it so deep. He loved it so much. It was a habit. And verse 50, it says, he understood not the saying which he spake unto them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. That word subject is that word hupotasso. So that means, see, Jesus was totally into his family. He was addicted to his mom and dad. He loved them. He was subject unto them. It didn't mean that he wasn't before and all of a sudden, okay, I'll finally obey you, Mom. I'll brush my teeth and tell you when I'm going to be gone for 3 days. It wasn't like that. It didn't say that he started being subject to them. He just was. He was addicted to his family. They were the ones who were called to train him to be the Christ. It says he learned through obedience. They had to teach him to be the freaking Christ. Excuse me. Luke 10:17, Jesus tells his disciples that even the devils are going to be subject unto you. They got to bend to you. You see, and so there's so many more. There's a verse you're going to get to if you study this word out, where it tells wives to be subject unto your own husbands. Don't you women love that verse? It's used 6 times. I looked them all up. But it says subject unto your own husbands. The word own is in there every time. And I thought, well, why is that in there? Did they have like a cheating spree, in the first century? When they had everybody was marrying these wild and loose girls? That's not what it was. You see, it wasn't they couldn't keep their women at home at night. You see, what it is a woman typically will serve far more than a man will. And when I ran bigger operations, I realized I had to really watch it that I didn't let these women, it didn't harm their marriage, because they'd want to serve all the time. And they would tell their husband, no, I got to go. I got to go help Mark. I got to go help this meeting. I got to go do this and check on this. And I'd have to watch it and say, you can't help at this meeting. No, I want to. You can't. You'd have to see, she needed to be with her own husband. That's who she needs to be the most addicted to, not to a minister. Ministers are to minister to help everybody else, not to be ministered to. And it gets twisted around in churches like crazy, you see. So enough on that stuff. So it's really a beautiful thing. It's a marriage saving thing he's put in here, because he knows the women are going to go hog wild and get involved, you see. But don't forget who you're married to, you see. Submit to your own husbands. Doesn't mean you don't. It also tells you to submit to leaders in other verses, but it doesn't mean it in the same way, because you're married. Your marriage comes first. So enough on that. See, so that's what being in subjection really means, to your own husband. So you don't go overboard and mess up your own relationship. And so almost everything we do in life is affected by our habits. Good ones move us forward to the promised abundance that anxiously awaits us. But bad habits rob us of who we really are and redirect our energy to the scraps left behind by others. And again, that habit loop, the trigger or the cue. Number 2, the routine or behavior. And number 3, the reward. So let's build great habits. God bless you all.